Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come, a time in which we can now finally talk about the Netflix adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender, given that, of course, the show has dropped all episodes and they are now out now, and I have completed my binge on day one, and so I am ready here now to review all the episodes as we start with the first in this video. We are going to break it down and talk about it, and I look forward to speaking with you all who have finished the show, or at least have finished episode 1. My fellow benders of all four nations, welcome to Uncle Iroh's Tea Shop, the Jasmine Dragon. Find yourself a seat, grab some jasmine tea, and enjoy the video. Like with my recent videos, let's see if we can hit a goal of 300 likes on this one. Alright, so let's just jump right into it. So as I did with every episode that I watched, I made sure to write down notes after the episode was done to collect my thoughts on everything that I watched, and episode 1, after a one-time watch, I would say is not just an amazing episode, but I would say it is maybe the best episode in the entire season. To some degree, I'm kind of glad that it is the best because you really do need to always start your seasons off very well, and I think they did that here in stride. So firstly, I have to say the opening 5 minutes was something I was truly not expecting. It opens up with a person basically on the run in the Fire Nation who is an earthbender disguised as a Fire Nation soldier. He's got a scroll in his hand and he's trying to flee and get out. The scroll carries information about the fact that the Fire Nation is in the process of getting ready to invade the Earth Kingdom, given the fact that this scene takes place 100 years before the show, during the time of Sozin. This whole chase sequence and action sequence between him and the Firebenders I honestly thought was very well done and almost kind of hardcore, given how much these guys are battered and bruised with the bending. This then carries on after he gets captured as he's thrown into the Fire Nation throne room with none other than Sozin himself, and when he explained to him that the plan was not to invade the Earth Kingdom but the Air Nomads, you do get that chilling effect, and then subsequently that is heightened even more when he actually burns him alive and they show it. This was something I truly was not expecting to see in a show like this based off a kid's cartoon. Like, honestly, I would go as far to say that this is almost an R rating scene right here given how graphic it is. From another point of view, it also I think is a very good way to start the show. This gives me memories of what had happened last year with the Last of Us adaptation, where they started the show with the scene of the three guys sitting around each other in front of an audience talking about the diseases and what could affect humanity, and so in a way it feels like the live-action Avatar show did something similar here with this sequence. And to this point, this is only then heightened even more when we get into the next 15 or so minutes of the episode, which is then when it fully kicks off. Real quickly though, I do want to speak to the intro because this is what comes right after. I actually don't know how I feel about the intro to the whole of the show because this intro only happens for the first episode. The thing I didn't like about it is that it's done with the use of CGI that I wasn't a fan of, and also it just looked very glossy. The dialogue itself I also felt was said on a little slower of a pace than what it probably should have been, and given the fact that it's only here for the first episode, I guess it doesn't matter all that much to me. I probably would prefer that they went along with the same lines as the OG cartoon with this, but I digress. This opens up where we see our first looks at the Southern Air Temple, which then leads us to seeing our boy Aang standing high and mighty above the entirety of the temple looking down on it. Gyatso tells him to come down, and I have to say I don't know how this scene of all scenes has already caused a massive controversy online in the case, particularly with Twitter, given the fact that some people have called it out on there and gotten massive engagement on their tweets with regards to saying that the scene ruins the character, and I have to say, I don't think it does all that at all, and at the same time, I just think they probably could have gone a different route in showcasing this power. In the cartoon, Aang does have moments where he uses airbending to kind of fly and float up in the air, and so this is not too far off from what he could do, although I do see the comparisons that people make with regards to a character like Zahir in The Legend of Korra, where he literally learned how to fly, even if without airbending. But again, here, Aang, he's using airbending to help him, and so it didn't really bother me as much as it did for other people. The next portion and chunk of time is an exploration of the idea around Aang as who he is and being revealed as the Avatar, and how Gyatso handles it and what it does to Aang given the fact that he leaves the Air Temple. I think this was very well done overall, and I have to say, Gyatso got the justice that I love that he got in the show, and it was only just a start. I don't know who this actor is that plays him, but I thought he played the character extremely really well for being, in a way, the teacher Aang had at the time. Their scenes together in the whole show, not even in this episode alone, were fantastic. This is also when we first see Appa, and again, I think from this point of view, this character was done very well in the show visually. He looks and acts like Appa, and with the scenes that those two have together with each other, I thought it was all done very well. Gordon Cormier as Aang also killed it in the beginning. This then leads us right into the beginning of what we had known about that was coming before the show even dropped, which was the genocide of the Southern Air Temple during the time of Sozin's comet. To some degree, I hope some people will kind of adhere to what I'm about to say and compare to, but this entire sequence gave me some vibe of what it felt like to watch Order 66 for the first time in Revenge of the Sith from Star Wars. There's a level to that I felt was also in here in how they showed it. When Sozin and the Fire Nation soldiers are attacking the temple in surprise fashion, might I add, during the time of which everyone is asleep, it makes it even more saddening because they were just not prepared and taken off guard. This allows the Firebenders to be able to sneak in and cause so much destruction and death to the point where I, honest to God, was so infatuated by this whole sequence and experience. The action I thought was very well done, and the violence is very present. The duel between Gyatso and Sozin was short, but honestly, given how much power he's got because of the comet, there was just no chance for Gyatso. In the process, he's also trying to defend these little kids at the same time, and again, there is something about this scene that felt very Order 66 to me, given the kids and given the fact that everyone was just being killed off. I can only imagine what happened to them, and I'm glad that they didn't show it. The other thing that also interconnects with this whole sequence is when Aang and Appa are caught in the storm as they are trying to make their way back to the temple, and of course, as we know, they get consumed by it, and he creates the iceberg in the water to encapsulate them both to save their lives, which then leads right into where we know the cartoon starts with the characters of the Southern Water Tribe. Sokka is doing his thing, rounding up the troops, if you want to call them that, of his tribe, and then Katara is practicing waterbending, weirdly enough inside of the destroyed Fire Nation ship in the ice, which that is a change up from the cartoon, given in the show it was actually off limits to them to go there, and they actually made it a part of the environment that surrounds the Southern Water Tribe, which I actually kind of find that to be cool. Like, it's almost in spitting distance if you think about it in terms of where you are able to see it from and how far it is. They then both go on a fishing trip in the canoe, which is when the original cartoon begins, and they both have their back and forth in terms of how they view waterbending and what the roles are in the tribe. And then this leads them down where they get caught in the stream and they end up right at the iceberg where Aang is. The way that they open this up this time around is not out of Katara's frustration with her brother, but because of the fact that she tries to waterbend the canoe back to them so that they can get back home, which is something I guess I just didn't really care all that much for in terms of how it was changed. It was just a very subtle change. The iceberg explodes, and we see Zuko's Fire Nation ship where he's inside writing his journal, and he's coming out on deck to see the blue light, and so they nailed that down pretty well. Another change that they made here is that Aang's portion of the iceberg is the only one that opened up, and so Appa's portion was still melting away, and so we don't get that funny, humorous scene that was in the cartoon, and so they just take him back immediately to the village. We then open up with our first scene between Zuko and Iroh, and at first, I'll be honest, even though I almost heard Dante Bosco's voice in Dallas Liu, who plays Zuko, I still felt like the scene was just our first introduction to the characters, and so I was a little hesitant at first with how they were talking about things and being portrayed. We then cut to Aang waking up from a bad dream and being introduced into the tribe, where he gets acquainted with Sokka and Katara, and the scene when we first got it revealed to us before the show dropped was pretty nice, given it is the reveal of Appa flying in as well because Aang is looking for him. Again, it's another change from the cartoon that I don't mind that much, although this next scene where he is seemingly being interrogated by the tribe and they want him to tell his story, this is a change up from the cartoon that, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't feel as good on. He basically gives his story, and then Gran comes in with a somewhat expositional monologue that is essentially word for word what the original intro was for the cartoon monologue. I don't personally think this was the best way to use those lines, given the fact that in the context of the scene, I felt like it was a little on the nose and it would have been better suited for the actual intro. As a matter of fact, I probably would have actually switched the monologues in the live action intro with what she says here in this scene, but that just might be me. Real quickly, because this next scene shows us being introduced to Zuko's crew and Lieutenant G, I was not a fan of the dialogue choice here because he he swears, and that is not something that I'm used to hearing in an Avatar show, let alone The Last Airbender, and so he caught me off guard, and I probably would have done away with that line because it doesn't feel right to hear a swear word be said in the show like this. It's dialogue choices like this that ultimately are showcased throughout the rest of the show, but I just wanted to address this first one here. We get a scene of Zuko training while Iroh watches and has fun with his jasmine tea, which thank God that they brought that in. Not just because my channel is called Uncle Iroh's Tea Shop, but the jasmine tea stuff is very important to his character. We also get a scene of Katara showing off her waterbending to Aang. It is a nice little scene that helps in the journey of Katara with her waterbending as Aang tries to help her. That is ultimately what leads into the eventual arrival of Zuko into the Southern Water Tribe. This whole sequence was pretty nice, given how it almost is essentially a one-for-one from the cartoon. Zuko and Sokka have a fight with each other, and I thought it was shot very well, and that is when Aang comes in to stop it and have a fight with them, only for him to then give himself up. I would also say that this then leads to things very quickly going off with Sokka changing his mind as he does in the cartoon, and he wants to go and get him back with Katara. The scene of them flying off with Appa I also thought was very funny when Sokka screams out, which is very potent for the character because he does stuff like that in the original. I was certainly not expecting the next sequence to just be a small conversation between Aang and Iroh, and I'll be honest, this one was a little stiff from the actors, but it didn't bother me that much. Aang finds a way to sneak out and escape, and we don't get the whole fight that he has with Zuko as he's able to get on top and find a way to jump off with his glider and fly away as the troops on board and Zuko are firing fireballs at him, which I thought was pretty cool. Which only then leads to me not expecting that then Sokka, with all his strength in the world, grabs onto Aang as he was hit by one as he's falling and he takes him up on Appa. Katara creates a wave to protect them and they are able to escape. Low-key, I did feel like this scene was done a little quick and we don't get the Avatar state sequence from Aang either, which probably would have added a lot of budget to the CGI on the episode, and I would assume that might have been the reason why they let it go, but I can't say for certain. This is when we get to the final 10 or so minutes of the episode, which ends off with them at the Southern Air Temple. Now, the other change here to the sequence is that at this point in the live-action adaptation, Aang had already been told about the fact that the Fire Nation had attacked, and so he is seeing the Southern Air Temple in ruins with a non-surprised look to it all. I actually personally don't mind this change to the lore because I actually think it makes more sense given the context of the cartoon. When you are watching the cartoon, I always thought it was a little weird that Aang played it off so keenly that no one was at the Southern Air Temple when they arrived, and he didn't seem to try and figure out why it was so empty. And so in this case, I feel like they did a better job here to when he eventually comes to the surprise of actually seeing Gyatso's dead body. That is what led him to go fully off, and so that whole sequence I thought was very well done. Visually, it looked very good for him to be in the Avatar state, and I actually personally don't mind that this is the first time he goes into the Avatar state in this version. If anything, this being the first time makes it more impactful than if, say, when he did it fighting Zuko and his ship. The other change they made is that it's not Katara who brings him back down, but it is actually him envisioning Gyatso, and to some degree, I actually don't mind this change either because in the cartoon, Katara makes it clear that she feels like they had already become a family, which I thought was a little too quick if you look back on it, but I do like that they included in the hug because I think Aang definitely needed that. And that right there is where the episode ends, and I have to say also with regards to the credits, I absolutely adore that they brought in the original ending credit music from the cartoon. It's a very nice choice to bring that back given it is so integral to the overall theme of the music of the show. In the end though, overall, like I said at the beginning, I thought this episode was a fantastic start, and even though that there was a couple of things that I wasn't as on board with, I think that the rumors about it being a really good start and a good episode were true, and to me, in my opinion, it is the best in the entire season. I thought the characters were introduced well and acted well, and I like the fact that it was a long runtime as well to start. So with that all being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is my review of episode 1 of Netflix's adaptation of Avatar The Last Airbender. We've now reached the most important part of the video, which is for me to tell you to please comment down below your thoughts on episode 1 of the adaptation and then everything around my commentary of it. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you not like it that much? Let me know and keep it fair, reasonable, and respectful. Also, please only comment on episode 1 as it pertains to this video. If you did enjoy this video and also liked the first episode, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here, as I plan to review all the other episodes and make a bunch more videos about the show as a whole in the coming weeks. Turn on the notification bell as well to be updated for when I do. On your way out of Uncle Iroh's tea shop, be sure to let him know how much you appreciate his jasmine tea and his words of wisdom that come with it. I hope you all have a good day, and I will see you soon to talk more Avatar.